Okay, I'll shut up now. Here we go.
Now, a good example, we were really into fuel and how the gravity drive works, and like I'm reading papers on like quantum physics and bending space in front of you. You don't actually warp, you bend the space, you bring the space towards you. And so what we were playing that, and it became like very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel and the game would just stop. You just want to get back to what you're doing. So we've recently changed it where the fuel in your ship and the grav drive limits how far you could go at once, but it doesn't run out of fuel. Maybe there'll be an update or a mod that allows that, but that's... Yeah, look, we've done a lot of different dialogue systems, and we've gone back to kind of I'll call it like a classic fuel.
I want to make sure I heard that right.
Update or limits how we're doing. So we've recently changed it where the fuel in your ship and the grav drive limits how far you could go at once, but it doesn't run out of fuel. Maybe there'll be an update or a mod that allows that, but that's... Yeah, look, we've done a lot of different dialogue systems, and we've gone back to kind of I'll call it like a classic Bethesda style dialogue with you're looking at the character and how they emote. You have a series of choices there. The scope of the game, the amount of content we're making is a bit more than we've done before in terms of quests and things like that, but the depth in some of this stuff with the dialogue, we just passed 250,000 lines. And so that's a lot of dialogue, but we've gone through it and the impact.
So, funny thing about this, I mentioned earlier, like there are some really sycophantic people who are crazy about Bethesda stuff. One of them said it doesn't matter that the lip syncing looks off. It doesn't matter that the combat's bad. This game has over 250,000 lines of dialogue, as if that's just like, that's a great game. There's a difference between correlation and causation, right? Just because Skyrim had a lot of dialogue does not mean that that made Skyrim great. Fallout 4 had a lot of dialogue. Yeah, sure. Yes, it's true. But like, that doesn't mean that the game is great just because it has a lot of dialogue. Same with World of Warcraft. Same with The Last of Us, whatever else you want to do. I think it shows that they're doing a lot of work in the writing department. They're doing a lot of stuff there, but one of the concerns is like with these types of games that feature procedural generated stuff is that a lot of the time it becomes quantity over quality. So for me, like, this is interesting. It shows that this is a huge game, but this does not mean that the game will be great, But for me, what this primarily tells me is that they're making dialogue a real focus. And that, I think, is a good thing. Because like I said, the only thing that will really differentiate this game above and beyond like Starfield or No Man's Sky is what they can bring to the table as far as like world building and narrative and RPG mechanics are concerned. And that seems to be what they're focusing on now. So I'm actually relatively interested in this. I don't think it makes the game great, but I do think it says something good about their priorities.
Is really there. And that includes my favorite speech persuasion system.
You're not talking us out of this score.
It feels like it's part of...
Okay, what is this?
The dial.
You have it wrong. Constellation is Explorers Group. So they have persuasion, 3 turns. Does that mean we have like 3 tries to convince people of stuff? Okay. So +1, +3, +4, +5. You have it wrong. Constellation is an Explorers Group. They aren't treasure hunters. Hey, if you want to trade ships, that sounds good to me. Frontier creaks when it turns away. I mean, if you want to embarrass yourself, go right ahead. I just made it past your entire crew. You really want to try your luck against me? Okay, so it's like a revamped version of the persuasion system. It just looks like it's calibrated in a slightly different way based on whatever your persuasion skill is. I don't know what this turn thing means. It sounds like you'll be able to take multiple turns trying to convince somebody of something instead of just a single check, which I actually, if that's the case, I actually find that really interesting. One of my frustrations with Bethesda style games is that with quick save, there's a lot of people who just stop treating the like hard checks as checks and just treat it as an exercise in quick loading. Like, oh, this is a really tough conversation, so I'm just going to quick save. And then I'm going to try to persuade them of this thing that has like a 5% clearance rate. And then if I don't get it, I'll just reload quick load, and then try it again until I get it. I know that that's not in the spirit of the game, but let's be real. If you have a dedicated button for quick saving and a dedicated button for quick loading, people are going to do it. Let's be completely honest. It's a thing that still happens. So I find this interesting. If it's like a multi-step thing where you might screw up the first offer or step in persuasion, then you can try to rework it. I find that actually relatively interesting. I don't know. We'll have to see more about that.
dialogue, but you're spending points to persuade them.
You willing to give up the ship?
Yeah, spending points to persuade. So he's got like 4 here, 2 turns left, and he picked...
You willing to...
Dialogue, but
He picked +3.
you're spending points to persuade them.
You willing to give up the ship? Just like that?
It feels natural, not like I've entered some other mode where I'm not doing regular dialogue. It's just I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want.
Having a way with...
Yeah, where do these points come from? I would assume through like your charisma or persuasion stat, but he says like you're spending points.
Not like I've entered some other mode where we're
Not talking us out of this.
includes my favorite speech persuasion system.
You're not talking us out of this score.
It feels like it's part of the dialogue, but you're spending points.
And then there's also a button for auto persuade where it just does this for you. But why wouldn't you just immediately do +4? If you want to embarrass yourself, go right ahead. I don't know. Maybe there's something where like they can argue with you and be like, no, I don't think that that's fair. I think it's this. No, I don't think you can give me your ship. You're lying to me. And then that deducts points. And so it becomes kind of like a mini card game where you go back and forth. Maybe there's something like that going on. I don't know. But I do like this more than just you have a 20% chance of clearing this check based on your stats. Because if you have a quick save, quick load system, I mean, this thing just, it doesn't really work. But this is more interesting to me.
Points to persuade them.
You willing to give up the ship? Just like that?
It feels natural, not like I've entered some other mode where I'm not doing regular dialogue. It's just I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want.
Having a way with words might prove useful.
That also had that same audio effect on the dialogue that Hogwarts Legacy had, but it was covered up by the music a little bit more. It's basically where they over compress it and then equalize the audio volume so that it sounds more consistent, but it sounds so bad to me. Like, just listen to this last line of dialogue. It's way too loud and level across. There's no like variability in volume.
To get what I want.
Having a way with words might prove useful.
I don't know, it drives me crazy, but some people don't care, I'm sure. Sasha, this looks unrelated to persuasion. Look at the answers. It looks like how annoyed the character becomes with us. So you're saying maybe it's like, this is the safest answer that won't upset them, but +5 might just piss them off and they respond poorly. And maybe it's like, as you gain levels in persuasion or your charisma stat, maybe these numbers drop so that you can end up better. And maybe some people are way more like thick skinned, so they have like a 9 on the persuasion versus that. But like, I just don't understand why you couldn't just pick the +4, +3, +1. Like, does this just not always convince them? Do you have to fill up a meter to convince them? Kind of like in Disco Elysium, there's some delicate dancing you have to do with dialogue to convince people of stuff. I don't know.
But you're spending points to persuade them.
You willing to...
Entered some other...
Also, shout out to Todd's watch. We looked at this in the last video where we looked at something with Todd, but he has a very, very nice watch. We looked it up, I don't remember which watch this was. Was it an Omega? And it's a very nice watch. I think it was like an $8,000 watch or something. It's a good watch. It's a good watch. I don't shame anybody about watches, by the way. I've said before, I think it's really healthy to have long-term goals for yourself. And if one of your long-term goals is you want to own a really nice car, a really nice house, or a nice watch or something, and that's like one of the things you want to accomplish, I think that that's good because it's going to motivate you to do better and make more money and be successful. So in this case, like, no shame to Todd for the watch. I know some people give him crap because like, oh, he's just trying to flex it. If you paid 8-10 grand for a watch, I think you've earned the right to flex it. Like, yeah, it's really cringe when like you see people that deck it out in like crystals and diamonds and stuff. That's extra cringe. But if you just have a really nice watch and you like wearing it because it makes you feel good, good for you. Props, dude. The wonder is not that the field of stars is so vast, but that man has measured it. Anatole France, 1894.
Control,
is it bad that I read that in like a Cockney accent? Isn't it? Process, isn't it?
Coordinates input. Plotting jump course. Guidance has converged. We're looking good. Allocating auxiliary reactor power. System checks are green across the board. Grav jump commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I can already tell the music's gonna slap.
It's hard to express how excited all of us at Bethesda are to be here with you today.
The leather jacket's back, baby! You guys know, I love the leather jacket. Doesn't Todd look great in it? Todd, baby. You look great. I need a dedicated light on him, don't I?
We're so grateful you're spending the time, and we know you've waited a long time to finally see Starfield. It's easily our most ambitious game.
The one thing I can't stand about these jackets, though, is that they have the zipper thing on the wrist, and every time he moves his hands, it rattles. Listen, you can hear it rattling every time he does this. Like we're gonna back up a little bit, but you'll be able to hear it. It's really funny.
To finally see Starfield. It's easily our most ambitious game ever. Like our previous games, it's an epic role-playing game where you get to be who you want and go where you want. But this time, you'll be exploring space. So let's jump right in. This is early in the game as you arrive on the mysterious moon of Crete.
It's pretty. Again, like I don't know what you do here though. Like it's really nowadays it's not that hard to procedurally generate a planet. I know that sounds insane, but it's not actually that crazy of an idea. But it's incredibly hard and very impressive if you can make that planet interesting. And that's the big question mark with Starfield right now. Yeah, by the way, everybody, we are streaming in 60 FPS. So if you see frame drops in this video, that's like, I'm watching the stats. I will let you know if the stream drops frames. But if you see stuttering, hitching, or anything, that's coming through the gameplay footage that they shared. You remember I was waving the red flag all about with Callisto Protocol. Because I said Callisto Protocol, in all of the gameplay footage that they shared with us, there were really weird hitchings and stutterings and artifacting and things, as Nadia would put it, frame glitches, all throughout the gameplay. And I said, if that's the best footage they have, I'd hate to see the worst. And sure enough, when the game launched, we saw the worst. And so for this, if we're seeing the best footage they have to offer, and there's hitching and stuttering, and also it's not playing above 30 FPS, I do not think we're going to see a game that runs above 30 FPS. And I don't think we're going to see a steady game at launch. I would just make mental note every time you see a little hitching, because that's not the stream, that's them. Sorry to pause again. I think that this is probably what we're going to see as the transition every time you come onto a planet. Because we know that there's no space to planet transition. Like there's no straight space to planet gameplay transition. There's going to be like a load screen or some transition that covers up a load screen. So it's not fluid like No Man's Sky or Star Citizen or one of those games. And I would guess that this is probably what that will look like. You'll approach like the planet's atmosphere, and then there will be a quick like fade to black, and then the camera will come up like this over a base or something, and it'll say the planet title as your ship comes into frame. I think that this is probably what they're doing. That's what I'm guessing. That transition is going to go quickly, or is going to quickly get old like it was with Mass Effect 1's Mako landing cutscene. I totally agree. It's going to get a little annoying. But the biggest problem for Bethesda for a long time has been data streaming, and it's a creation engine issue. And I don't think that's going to magically get fixed in this game, which is why I think there's going to be probably some hefty load times for a while. But who knows? Maybe that was because they were trying to get it working on PlayStation as well. Now they don't have to worry about that, and they can just optimize for the Xbox. You never know. I mean, that can make an actual difference. It really can. That smoke looks like ass. Hate to be that guy. The smoke looks like it's rendering at 15 frames a second, whereas everything else is at 30. I'm going to rewind it. Just look at the smoke. It's choppy. It's like the smoke effect is at half the frame rate. It's really weird. Dude, do you remember when like the UI element leaked? Like it was just this thing leaked. And people made like dozens of videos off of it. It's hilarious. So already you can see a good amount of pop in on the lower levels. You see all this popping in over here. And I know, like, Luke, you're being too picky. Maybe. I will not deny that. Maybe I am. But this is also supposed to be a next-gen title. Or current-gen title. But it's supposed to be significantly improved over Fallout 4. And I will say, like, so far, none of this looks markedly better. But whatever. It's not all about graphics, right? It's not all about graphics. Mining beams. When we're talking about, like, gameplay loops, I don't think you're going to do any mining or crafting stuff significantly better than, like, No Man's Sky is doing it at this point. Or Star Citizen with their mining operations. So, again, the thing that I'm interested in primarily is going to be combat and the RPG mechanics.
Of the Crimson Fleet are using the facility.
Oh, dude, that 30 FPS. Environmental lighting and the fog and God rays and stuff does look way better than Fallout 4, so I'll give him that. This section I think does look significantly better.
Hey, there you are. We've got company. Opening fire. Take that guy down, huh?
One of the biggest things I'm noticing, and don't be mad at me for pointing this out, because once I point it out, you'll never be able to unsee it. There's like no gore. There's no blood. There's no gore effects, which might not sound like a big deal. But you think about how big of a deal that was in Fallout 4 with the dismemberment effects, with the kill cams, with all of that stuff. That's all completely missing. Now, I know, well, they're wearing armor. Maybe it's just that the armor is protecting it and so the blood doesn't leak out. Maybe. But I think when we see later them shooting like aliens and stuff and people not wearing armor, you're also not going to see any gore or stuff. And that might not bug you. It might not bug you. I think most people won't notice it consciously. I think people will generally just not notice it. But it's going to make the game feel much less realistic and grounded. And instead, it turns these characters into just kind of like PS2 era grunts that you're just blasting through yet, you know? Maybe not in the dev cycle. Well, I think in the Maddie video we're going to watch next, he pulls a quote from Todd Howard where he talks about the gore. And he doesn't say outright that they cut the gore, but what Todd does say is that they've had to reevaluate priorities and inclusions in the game, such as gore, to balance whether they want gore, whether they want a stable frame rate, whether they want to be able to do more impressive things with environmental lighting. So, you know, it's always trying to choose between like gore effects or environmental lighting and things like that. That's all he really says. But what you can draw from it, since we don't see any gore effects in the game, in anything that they've shown us, what we can draw from that is that they cut gore to try and get the game running more stable. And that's a decision they made. They decided that was the better option. They're the game devs. That's up to them. But it's something to notice that they're having to cut staple features from previous games that nowadays are kind of like just taken for granted. Like, yeah, it's going to have that system. They're cutting that to make the game run smooth. And that even then it doesn't look to be running that smooth. So I think that there's not going to be gore, and I don't think it's a late addition. I think they cut it to try and make other things work. Real quick, I do want to address something. People were saying that it's way too contrasty, so like the shadows are too dark. I think what that is, it's actually a very intelligent and like smart thing that they've done. What they've done is they looked at source photos and reference photos from like rovers and trips, you know, our trips to the moon and stuff. And what they realized is when there's no atmosphere, the light doesn't diffuse through the air particles, so you don't end up with the smooth shadows or as smooth as shadows as you do on Earth. Because on Earth, you can have like a sunny day and then you can be sitting underneath cover from the sun, but you can still see like the grass underneath the cover, right? You can still see stuff even though you're blocked by the sun. And it's because the light's bouncing through all of the air particles and the little gas particles and everything around you, so it can light it up. But when you don't have either as thick an atmosphere or you don't have an atmosphere at all, that doesn't really happen, which is how you end up with those super stark shadows on the moon. And I think that that's what they're taking inspiration from here. I think like it's warranted based on the science, and it shows that they've done their homework. That's at least what this makes me think of. But I would agree, it doesn't look good as a showcase. Like, I think that this shows that they paid that attention to detail. I think they probably should have said that though in the presentation. Like even something as simple as how drastic the shadows are is something we took into consideration based on how thick the atmosphere is. Say that, people are like, oh, this isn't a bug, this is a feature. This isn't a sign that the game looks like crap, it's a feature, and it'll calm people down. Because as is, all people see with this is that the lighting looks really crappy, right?
You're gonna pay for that!
Oh my God, ADS, for the love of God.
After some initial encounters, you're invited to join Constellation.
Todd, baby boy, I love you. You know I do. But you gotta condition your hair, bro. Come on, man. Look how dry that shit is. I mean, look at him. The poor guy looks like he's been in a desert for 20 years. Get yourself some good conditioner. You'll feel refreshed, renewed, and trust me, you'll feel like a different person. But you need to condition, my brother.
Who, in the future the game is set in, are the last group of space explorers. To meet them, you'll head to the capital city of New Atlantis.
So there's an old one? Okay, maybe I take back what I said about the shadows. Because this obviously has an atmosphere similar to Earth because there's people not wearing headgear or helmets or anything. And the shadows still look really, really dark. It's just, I don't know. It comes off very, very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. The shadows are too sharp and dark. Like there should be a little softer lighting here. Maybe it's that their global illumination tech isn't working properly. I don't know, but it doesn't look quite right. They heavily imply that you can visit Earth. They have a name for it, a different name, but I don't know.
Welcome to Constellation. We have a lot to talk about. We're all here because we're committed to the biggest question of all. What's out there?
Cue random British accents.
These artifacts could be everything we've been looking for. As to what they are, what they're built.
Maybe we turn on HDR. That's actually a really good point, Liver. It might actually be, because I was actually thinking, it looks like when HDR is recorded off of like a console and then it's recompressed to make it look right in standard definition content. So maybe it is actually that they're just recording HDR footage and then compressing it down to standard definition, and that makes the shadows look a little crushed. Normally, it would make the shadows look extra flat and overly bright, but maybe it's the LUT that they're using. I don't know, but that actually could be an explanation. Either way, it shows that there's incompetence involved in the recording process and their process of making trailers. They should catch that. I mean, I'm some dumbass YouTuber. I'm not like trained in video editing, and I know that. So maybe that's what's going on. Either way, there's a problem. I know what HDR looks like on SDR displays. It does not look like it. Well, specifically when you record. So like normally when you have HDR, like you have this much color to play with, right? SDR has this much. So to record it, it all gets crushed down. And what can sometimes happen is it'll end up looking really grayed out and flat. Let me actually show you. This is something you guys, for those of you who have seen The Last of Us Part 2 critique, you'll know that video looked really weird and contrast heavy, right? That was because of this very thing I'm talking about. So recorded directly off the console, it actually caused this like crushing effect on the blacks. Let me see if any of these clips I have do it justice. This is a perfect example. So I was playing the game regularly. Oh my God. And recording it, and it looked fine on my HDR TV. But when I recorded it and brought it back, all the blacks were way too dark. I mean, I could still see what was going on here, but on this recorded version, it's basically blacked out because the HDR is overcompressed back down. So this might be what's going on with Starfield, but I don't know for a fact. Oh my God, it drives me crazy when it does this. Like, come off it. Outside there were good examples. Like all this, it's way too dark. Yeah, like here. This is a great example in these cinematics where it's just way too contrasty. It's like you just crank the contrast. And my understanding is this is because what the PlayStation 5 or 4 Pro, I think it was a PlayStation 4 Pro, was recording this. What it does is it takes the HDR footage and then it converts it into standard, and it ends up looking really gray and flat. And then they apply a LUT to, which is basically just like a series of filters to make it look right. But if the LUT sucks or is too aggressive, you end up with something like this, and the blacks are crushed, and it just doesn't look right. So that's why The Last of Us Part 2 video looks so weird. Because the recording process, I didn't realize this was a problem until after I'd finished playing the game and recording all of the footage. And I didn't want to spend another 25, 30 hours replaying everything just for the blacks to look a little like softer. So I just went with it. And some people noticed, but a lot of people didn't seem to care. But that seems to be, I mean, that could be, it doesn't seem to be, but it could be what's going on with this footage. It could just be that it's been recorded by somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. That's not really an excuse because they should know what they're doing. I mean, again, this is literally their jobs, but who knows?
You'll be part of solving that puzzle now.
So, you found something?
A new guy found it.
You dug up the artifact, right? That means you saw it. The visions?
The artifact you found appears to be one of many, scattered across the galaxy. If we can find more, we can unlock their secrets.
Beautiful, isn't it? The man who sold me this told me that it spoke to him.
Of course, the settled systems is full of groups with other priorities.
That's the Crimson Fleet!
Everybody get ready!
The fleet doesn't follow the rules. Agree to work for UCC staff. Together, we take down these cutthroat pirates.
We're not just here to shoot the bad guys. We're peacekeepers. We protect the people of the Free Star Collective.
When you sign up with the Crimson Fleet, no one quits. The only way out is death.
The path ahead may be dangerous, but we are not stopping.
Most Dusties don't even make it this far.
Because whatever lies at the end of this road will change humanity forever.
Do you think they're gonna have like Skyrim Easter eggs and stuff, and you can find like in the that collector's collection, you can find like an Elder Scroll in a case somewhere. He's just sitting on it. That would be super funny. Something about those facial animations. I think you're thinking of the term bad. But dude, 250,000 lines of dialogue, so it's okay. See, that was a cynical thing that I just said. I wasn't being skeptical. I was being a cynical prick. What I will say is I think that the game can have iffy facial animations and it can still be really good and worth playing. It's a little bit of a bummer. I would like it to be better, but yeah, I don't think it a bad game makes, right? I will say there were a lot of like weird stutters and drops in the footage we saw, especially in combat, so that's worrisome. But I mean, it would be really freaking funny if all of these issues with the graphics and the visuals that we're seeing, if all of that was tied up simply because they recorded the footage wrong. It would be the most Bethesda reason for drama ever. It would be so funny if that's what it was. But honestly, now that you point that out, it might actually be what's going on. Because either it's just the lighting sucks and everything is too dark and too contrast heavy, or they recorded it wrong. I would like it to be that they recorded it wrong and it doesn't look like that when you're actually playing it, but that would be really freaking funny. The fact that all of the footage they've shown so far, though, in multiple instances looks like that makes me think that it's more of an artistic choice that I just don't like. But who knows?
That gives you a look at the stories in Starfield. But ultimately, it's not our story. It's the story you create by who you are and the choices you make. And that starts with character creation.
Biometric ID, slick profile. So these are just the initial templates, okay.
It's our most flexible yet. You can customize all the elements of how you look.
It's cool that you can customize walk style. That's interesting.
You'll pick a background that gives you 3 starting skills.
You can force a target NPC at or below your level to stop fighting for a while. Gain an increased chance of success on speech challenges. Bargaining, buy items for 5% less and sell them for 10% more. And I mean, just look how many of these there are. Beast Hunter, Bouncer, Bounty Hunter, Chef. I know that sounded like I said chef or chef, but chef. Combat Medic, Cyber Runner, Cyberneticist, Diplomat, Explorer, Gangster, Homesteader, Industrialist, Long Hauler, Pilgrim, Professor Ronan. There's a lot.
Says here you spent some time as a diplomat. Having a way with words might prove useful.
There are optional traits, and these come with
From Main Streets of Neon, you gain access to special dialogue options, better rewards from some missions on Neon, crime bounty, and other factions. Greatly, other factions can't be combined with other allegiance or other faction allegiance traits. Okay, what were the other ones that they?
Having a way with words might prove useful.
Introvert, you really need your alone time. You have more endurance when adventuring alone, but less when adventuring with other human companions. Can't be combined with extrovert. That's actually kind of fun. So different boosts and perks while exploring with companions versus not. That's interesting.
There are
Space Chef. Yeah, I'm interested in that. I don't know what that means.
optional traits.
Kids stuff. Your parents are alive and well, but you can visit them and you can visit them at their home, but 10% of all the money you earn is deducted automatically and sent to them. Huh. That's interesting. You can visit your parents? What? Okay.
Advantages and disadvantages. But it's not just in how you can
I can finally meet my dad. Yeah, you can. I kind of like the Tomorrowland feel to it. It has a bit of the early space race aesthetic. Yeah, I'll be real. Every time I look at it, it just screams Outer Wild or Outer Worlds to me. I know that it's its own thing. I know it's just I get it. I get it. All of the complaints of me saying that, I understand. But every time I see the environmental design, I see that stuff, I can clearly see Outer Worlds inspiration, or at least it looks very similar to Outer Worlds. But I think it's that both games are trying to take inspiration from Fallout. And in the case of Outer Worlds, it's just that they were taking inspiration from Fallout. They wanted Fallout in space. And then for Bethesda, they just don't know how to make any other game than Fallout in space. So it just ends up looking really, really similar.
look, but in how your character plays and develops. The skill system combines
Only a trained sniper truly understands all elements necessary to patiently and effectively neutralize the target at an excessive range. Scoped weapons are steadier and have less sway. Interesting. So it's like certifications and badges. I still think that Skyrim's skill tree and system was probably the best. Just the fact, like, the more you do something, the more points you gain in it. I don't know why they moved away from that. I thought that that worked really, really well because it encouraged experimentation. But I guess the downside is that it made it kind of inflexible because you would use like two-handed weapons, for example, level those up super hard. And then you'd swap to a bow and you just are terrible at it and it doesn't deal any damage, even though your level's gone up and stuff. So it made it so once you decided to commit to one play style, you were stuck with that one. So maybe that's why they don't do it anymore. But I thought that that one was super fluid, easy to understand. I just really liked it. This, I think, is fine. It looks fine, but we'll see. It also looks much less like a skill tree and more like just a collection of things that you can choose. It looks like you start up here and then you work your way down. Less like a skill tree and more like a skill pantry that you can choose from.
the best from our previous games, and you can unlock new skills as you level up, and then you
Skill
rank
bush.
those skills.
So you get the skills and then you can rank those individual skills up. Okay, Sentry's conflict have proven that when it comes to threat elimination, few things stack up to a reliable power of combustion. Ballistic weapons do 10% more damage at rank 1. Rank 2, ballistic weapons do 20% more damage. Rank 3, ballistic weapons do 30% more. And rank 4, the range is increased by 30%. Okay, what game had this? There was another game I played recently that did this, where you unlock skills and then those skills can be individually leveled up. I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of like The Witcher 3 with the, you unlock the quick attack thing and that's level 1. Then you can upgrade that again and then, apply those skills and then it builds out into your little tree if you apply it. So I guess it's similar to that. Ragnarok did it. I guess they did. You could level up those individual skills. That's probably what I'm thinking of. Did Cyberpunk do it? Yeah, I guess they did. So for some skills only had one level, but or one rank to be consistent. But I guess they did do that. Yeah.
Skills up by using them and completing challenges. And there's deep crafting systems, from running research projects with resources you find to crafting weapon mods.
Sorry, this UI gives me a headache. Okay, food and drink, pharmacology, outpost development, equipment, weaponry, projects and progress, helmet mods, research. So you have to like select the research project and then it'll take in-game time to complete. kind of annoying, but okay.
Research projects with resources you find.
Barrel mods blocked. Required materials: iron, nickel, sealant. Barrel mods 1, 2. Optic sight mods blocked. Progress. Man, I thought that this was way more intuitive in Fallout 4. Why? And even Fallout 76. This just is like, what if that like really well integrated and simplistic UI we had for Fallout 4? What if we took that and then just turned it into a spreadsheet and then we made that the UI? This just screams Excel to me.
To crafting weapon mods needed to survive. And you can build your own outposts. These act as a home away from home for survival and resource generation.
So power limits, crew, cargo, production times.
You can choose where and how to build each one, and you can hire characters you meet to keep it up and running. But that's not all.
You better believe that I'm going to play on PC and I'm just going to give myself unlimited crafting materials, because I cannot stand having to like run around the galaxy to find 3 more pieces of glue to be able to craft the landing pad. Like, I find that so annoying.
You can even build your own spaceships.
Oh yeah, good notice, Pipq. Good point in this little bit.
It's needed to survive.
Remember, we were trying to play devil's advocate and say maybe gore is just not a thing on humans because they're wearing armor. Well, even on these alien monsters, there's no gore. There's no gore or blood or anything. So, uh-oh. I know what some people are going to say. They're going to say, well, maybe because they're aliens, they just evolve differently and they just don't have blood. Ever think of that, Luke? You need to stop being so Earth-centric. Maybe. They took so much into consideration that some creatures, and it just happens to be every creature that they've shown, some creatures don't have liquid in their bodies to bleed out with. Maybe. Or maybe there's just not gore in the game. Maybe that's what it is. You know, at some point you gotta step back and be like, am I simping a little too hard? Maybe. Probably.
Outposts. These act.
Real talk though, this whole system of building bases and stuff, I do think is actually pretty cool. I don't want to bash it too hard because I do think that this looks like it could be fun. I'm hoping there aren't weird like limits on what you can do and like how many of these bases you can build. Hopefully you can just build them on like almost every planet you visit, so you always have something to go back to. That would be really cool. My worry is that they have a limit of like, oh, you can only have 3 bases at a time. So if you want to build one on this planet, you've got to destroy the other one. Hopefully they don't have that. It sounds like it'll probably be limited by the number of people you find, like the crew, as you see down here. So the more crew you have, the more bases you can have because you can populate them. I don't know, but hopefully there's no limit.
As a home away from home for survival and resource generation. You can choose where and how.
Here, Brian, I don't understand. Do they not have the performance budget for a couple of animated alpha textures? This is a giant red flag in my opinion. This is a front and center effect that they cannot afford. Apparently, they can afford smoke, but it seems like they probably exchanged the gore for the smoke effects from the guns and stuff like that. The thing is, like, the frame-to-frame budget in the engine pipeline, in the creation engine, has always been extremely limited. And they seem just wholly incapable. You know, it's like, I think it was Joseph Anderson who said it at one point. I saw it in a clip on, I think, TikTok that somebody had taken. But basically, he said, like, he was trying to figure out if Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 were indications of Bethesda just being a company that regularly lies to their customers to get them to buy stuff, overhypes, and then underdelivers, or if this is just the best they can do and their fans get overly excited. And he's like, I think you can come to a conclusion either way. On the one hand, I think Todd, he definitely overhypes things. And he knows what he's doing. Like, he knows when he's hyping things up a lot. He's a great salesman. but he knows what he's doing. He's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. And so I think that that's part of it, that they do overpromise a little bit. But the fans definitely take the ball and run with it. And all you have to do to see that is look on Twitter, go to the Starfield Reddit, look at, any comment section on these posts, go check out Lone Vault Wanderer's videos on this. Some of these people are like totally incapable of acknowledging problems and even exercising the slightest amount of skepticism. So I think that that's a part of it. But at the same time, I do think that this is the best that they can do. I think with the performance issues, we've seen like modders are able to fix these issues within a few days of the game's launch. It just seems like their staff is incapable of polishing this stuff. And it's weird, but it might also be that they can just, they go, well, modders will fix it. We'll focus on the console version. Modders will fix the PC version. And that's just a sucky thing to do. So I think that there's clearly fault with the developers, but there's also fault, I think, with some fans who refuse to hold their feet to the fire. So I think that it kind of cuts both ways.
To build each one, and you can hire characters you meet to keep it up.
So they reworked the lighting engine. Bro, Star Citizen replaced their entire renderer from the 20-year-old legacy CryEngine, went to proprietary one with lots of benefits. Why not just do that? Well, for one, Bethesda probably doesn't have a budget of $500 million for this game. I think that's part of it. Just being real. Like, they're on a tighter budget. They can't really justify spending 10 years delaying the game while they rebuild the entire engine from scratch. That's one of the unique things about Star Citizen, is that they have effectively unlimited resources, and everybody, like, the running joke is that the game is never coming out. So they can delay indefinitely until they fix the renderer pipeline, until they fix this or that. They can just push it off indefinitely. Whereas Starfield, like, they're a company and they don't have that amount of money just pouring in. Sales are probably drying up from Fallout 4. Everybody who wants it already owns it. So they need to get money rolling again. And they got to get another game out. But it's just, I think that at this point, this engine, let me be clear. If this game launches and has these issues again, if it's yet another sort of Fallout 4 launch or Fallout 76 launch, and it's just a buggy, broken pile of crap, at that point, there is zero excuse. They've got to change engines. It's just, I get it. The creation engine, you've used it for a long time. Modders use it. You've just got to change it. Go do what CDPR is doing. Move over to Unreal Engine. Learn that one. Spend extra time porting everything over for Elder Scrolls 6. It's just unacceptable at this point. You can't release broken piles of garbage for decades and then expect people to just roll over and be okay with it. Just figure something else out, because it's getting ridiculous at some point. If you, like Herobrine said, if you can't afford in your like rendering pipeline, if you can't afford to render 3 or 4 alpha textures, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? This stream regularly, like, you see this stream every 60 seconds is rendering this WebM video for this overlay with the little spinning logo in the center, wherever it is, right there. They can't afford to do that in their game when an enemy dies, and to have a little alpha video play out, alpha WebM video basically attached to the character model, anchored to it, play out with the blood effect. Like, they can't even do that. You know what? Don't even bother with like the puddles of blood on the ground. We'll blow past that. Just have like a little blood spatter when bullets go into somebody's face. They can't even do that. Sure, the budget is valid point, but come on, Creation Engine 2, I'm sure most devs know their engine is limiting in huge ways. Oh, I'm sure it's got to be something like in the studio that's insufferable. Like, even when I worked at like Best Buy, we would like put orders for like TVs and stuff into a system called OMS, and apparently that's been discontinued, and now they reworked it because enough people complained. But basically, like, if you came into the store and you bought a TV from me, I had to go into this antiquated software that was like 20 years old. It was built in like the 90s at the time, so 20 years old from that time, like 2017, 18. And it was like 20 years old. It was from the 90s. It was a super old school program, but I had to put the SKU of the item in. There was a special field to put the instructions in. I had to like find the exact address with the proper formatting for the zip code. Otherwise the order would fail. And like, it was insanely difficult to use, and it was unintuitive. It was broken, didn't work half the time. And we complained constantly about it to the district managers and corporate heads that would come through every once in a while. Because they have no idea. They're just managing budgets and supervising stuff. They don't really care about the day-to-day workings of the company as long as it's working. So they're like, well, you hit your sales target, so why would we bother fixing this? And for Bethesda, I think it's a similar thing. Like, they're complaining to Todd Howard about the creation engine issues and rendering pipelines and budgets. Todd probably hasn't worked on the engine or coded anything himself in 15 years, I would guess. I don't think he's touched it probably since Fallout 3. And even then he was probably pretty hands off. He has a background in coding, but I don't think he's messed with it really reliably and consistently, probably for 20 years. So for him, he's like, well, I mean, the engine's working. We have the game running. Why would we spend all this money and time reworking it or getting a new engine? You know, because he's not on the front lines.
Up and running. But that's not all.
There's also just something weird with the smoke effects. It's like they're rendering at quarter resolution, and I don't know. Maybe that's how they're scaling it. Maybe on consoles, the smoke effects render at quarter resolution and half frame rates. And then on PC, you can crank it all up. I don't know, but the smoke looks weirdly blocky and chunky.
You can even build your own spaceships.
This is cool. I'll give him this.
You can choose crew members. And yes, you can completely customize.
Gojo, thank you for becoming a member.
There's loads of different.
This is actually really, really cool. I do really like this. So you see, like at the top right, there's the vendor has money, the player has money, and then you're building the ship based on the money that you have. It can jump 30 light years, top speed of 150, weighs 300, mobility is 49, cargo is 450, shields 220, hull is 252. LAS, I don't know what that, laser maybe? 104 balance, I would assume. 65 MSL, I don't know what MSL is. Maneuvering thrust, I don't know. But I mean, I really like this. I hope that you can really crank this out. I mean, it would be cool if you could build like a huge freighter, like the 890 jump in Star Citizen. If you could build something that size, if you just have tons of money and resources, you can just build something insane. Hopefully it's not limited to something like super tiny
Layout.
But I mean, even if it is, modders will probably fix it.
There's loads of different modules, ship manufacturers, and more. I have to say, it's so cool. We just absolutely love this.
It is really cool.
It's not just how the ship looks, it's how it performs. From engines to shields to weapon systems. Because yes,
Missile might be missiles. Oh yeah, maybe.
Thrusters boosted.
Is this the first Bethesda game ever to have vehicles? Other than horses, but like, I think so. Same thing. I think this is the animation that probably plays out when you leave the planet. I would guess you probably have to go to like a launch pad like this. Thank you, Postmodern Connor, by the way, becoming a member. Thank you. I would guess that it's probably where you have to like go to this launch pad, refuel, and then you take off from there into space. And so then this animation plays out. It's fine. I would guess that is going to get tedious, but you know, it's going to be a thing. Connor, 1 month of 16 times the stream quality. Much love. Much love to you, Connor. Thank you so much. 1 month. Resub, you got the gold badge now. Rock and roll. See, and then it just fades into you above the planet. I really find that frustrating, especially because like 6 years ago, No Man's Sky did it with just planet to space. Sure, it didn't do it great at the time, but it just feels very outdated to have a load screen between them. I'm going to keep complaining about it, but whatever. Given the gore situation, I wouldn't be surprised if they severely reduce the quality of the smoke. Mind you, it's 2D from what I can tell. It's not volumetric to keep frame rate stable. Yeah, it looks two-dimensional. It doesn't look like it's an actual simulated smoke like what NVIDIA used to do with their proprietary stuff when you plugged in the physics stuff. It's just, I mean, if your game is running so rockily and unsteady that you can't afford in the rendering pipeline, like a 2D animated video at full resolution, you are, I mean, this thing is pretty shaky. Pretty shaky. Well, I wonder if Creation Engine, yeah, sorry, Rocky. Sorry, that I used your name in vain. I'm so sorry. Hi, Dream. Hell, I wonder if Creation Engine 2 has the ability to not render things behind you. If it can't, then maybe the reason why they have such a limited budget. Oh, like if it doesn't have culling, that would be unreal and really, really funny if that's if that's what it's doing. The real Dream for real. Do you know who Dream is? I try to forget. I don't care what anyone says. I think it's actually really cool to be able to just build your own ship. I find that super cool. Do you guys like remember those old Robot Warrior games where you could build your own robot and then fight it in the arena against other bots and stuff? Dude, I played those games so much as a kid. I'm curious about how they approach LOD in past games. LOD was always quite glaring in your face. With the introduction of virtually non-existent LOD via Unreal Engine 5, it's a tough competition. Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know, that Unreal 5 tech stuff that they've done with Line of Distance is insane. This just strikes me as a game that could be really great if it was made with a different engine, you know?
We can't wait for all of you to experience the game.
Ivor, Rocky. Ivor.
Being with us today, and thanks for all the support you've given us over the decades, especially on this game. It's been an incredible journey for us making it, but we know that's really only the beginning, for it's when all of you play it that the real journey begins. And you may be wondering, just how big is this game? So we thought we'd take one last moment and show you. Let's take a look at one of our planets, Jemison. You can land into Atlantis, but you can also land and explore anywhere on the planet.
Scan, survey, rocky planet, gravity's 0.91, temperate, O2, magnetosphere unknown, fauna is abundant, flora is abundant, water is biological. You can land, set landing target, clear route, show me, whatever that means.
And it's not just this planet, it's all the planets in the system. From barren but resource-heavy ice balls to Goldilocks planets with life. And not just this system, but over 100 systems. Over 1,000 planets, all open for you to explore. We can't wait to see what you find.
So my understanding, based on previous interviews with Todd, is that he really likes the Creation Engine because it allows their artists and their world designers to put stuff in the game quickly and to design worlds quickly. Every time he's been asked about upgrading the engine, he says the Creation Engine allows us to do stuff quickly and efficiently. Seems to be the name of the game for them. And I'm sure at this point they have game designers and level designers that have worked with this engine for 20 years and they know it like the back of their hand, so they can quickly do stuff. You know, put this city together in the span of a week. You know, it's super, super quick. And that's great. My understanding is that Unreal Engine is just as quick, if not quicker, and it runs better and more stable. Still has some issues. It's not end all be all. Like, it still takes a lot of work, but it's great. The biggest concern I have, and the thing that could save Starfield and make it really, really special, is if exploring those 1,000 planets actually is interesting. 1,000 Planets sounds great until you think about it for 2 seconds and realize that it's not actually a given that that's going to be interesting. How do you make every single one of these systems that each has like 10 to 15 planets? How do you make those worth exploring? I think they probably put like a base or 2 on each planet, and they probably get copy and pasted pretty heavily. Still could be worth exploring, but it's still like, you can just think of each of these systems as having like 10 different interesting like individual set pieces, and that's it. And so you have a whole planet with like one interesting thing to do. Like they go here to the ice giant right here. And like this whole thing is just an ice planet. So you can go there. It's procedurally generated, so you can mine resources and then leave. But there's nothing else really interesting. I don't know. I like the idea of there being like special Easter eggs hidden all around. I could really, really like it if like on TikTok you're browsing and then somebody's like, oh, go to Chala, the moon of Olivas in the Alpha Centauri system, and then go over to these coordinates. I don't see coordinates listed, but it would be cool if there were coordinates where you could ping exactly where it is. It's like right under this crest here. If you go down here on this planet, there's a cave. And if you go in the cave, you can find one guy who crash landed here, and he has a note left to his family. You can grab that, take it to another planet, and then give it to his family, and it completes a special quest. Stuff like that I find really, really cool. And I think that that could make the game worth exploring and could actually justify a lot of it. Still really tricky because it's an entire planet or moon, and there's like 5 or 6 interesting things spread around the entire planet. I don't know how you make that feel approachable, but we'll see. But as for all this, I mean, the 1,000 Planets looks interesting. Look at this frame rate, though. Watch this drop. Uh-oh. So this is why people think you can go to Earth, because you can actually go to Mars and find like the Curiosity rover and stuff, which is pretty cool. This is going to be one of the biggest Easter eggs. I hope this thing is actually hidden. I hope it's not just like a major point that you find if you go to Mars. I hope they make you search for this. It'd be super cool, especially because like you can find where these rovers are actually sitting right now. You can look up the coordinates on Mars, and you know, NASA has shared that. So it would be super, super cool if you could actually look at those coordinates from NASA and then figure out where on the planet it is. It would be super cool to see that. Again, this is impressive. This is cool. You can see in the distance the other planet. That's awesome. But also, like, what do you do? What makes this worth exploring? That's the tricky thing. And that's the thing I haven't seen any clear answers on. They say like there's stuff to find. There are bases. You can travel to 1,000 different planets and moons. Cool. But why would you do that other than just to get resources? There's got to be a hook, and I haven't heard what the hook is.
Things about the previous games were random encounters that you have in the
Oh, this is the guy. We watched this one too. This is the guy that just looks like a really good hugger.
world. For Starfield, how has the random encounter system been improved or expanded upon, if at all?
So very exciting. This time around, we have entire planets that we have to populate. So we actually have new tech to take whole locations that we've built and put them on the planets. Now you could say maybe you're going to an outpost and you actually discover there's a whole group of people there with a particular problem. Whereas
So that sounds just like copy and pasting, like a dynamic copy and paste system, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's also not good. And how do these planets actually look outside of the shots that were showcased in this footage? What if they're actually doing points of interest in this specific? I think this game could really benefit from creator previews. And I'm saying that as somebody who almost certainly will not get invited to them because Bethesda seems to have completely blacklisted me. But like if they gave Maddie, for example, the chance to just play this game for an hour and a half, that I think would do a lot. It would show, for one, they're really confident in the game. Two, it would allow him to like explore and actually see what the game has to offer. I think that could do a ton to quell the fears and the concerns that people have.
As you know, before it might be just a person coming up to you along the road. Now it's an actual whole location that can be put there. And maybe they have a problem, like one of our members was kidnapped. They've been kidnapped by some pirates. And we think they're over there. We actually are replacing a whole other location with that person in it and enemies around it. So it's a dynamically placed settlement that is taking you to a dynamically placed dungeon as you're walking through the planet.
So basically,
Dynamically placed settlement with a dynamically placed dungeon. The word dynamic makes me think that it can change, but maybe it's just like the engine generates it and they lock that in. It's not actually like dynamic. I think I get what he's saying though. Like it's responding to the planet's topography. It's not necessarily just responding to the individual instance of the player. I think that's what he's saying.
basically, at any point in time on a planet, you can just experience a random encounter anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think we're really only just scratching the surface of what that tech can do.
We can see what looks like Earth's own solar system in the Starfield gameplay trailer. Will there be quests taking us back there and exploring how things have changed?
Yeah, actually, very early on in the main quest, we take you to our solar system, which in our lore is called the Old Neighborhood.
Nice.
And you'll be being sent there on a mission from Constellation to discover the mysteries of the artifacts. And you'll get in contact with the question of what happened to Earth, but also you'll go to Mars, and there's actually a settlement, one of the early settlements that humanity created after they left Earth. It's called Sidonia, and that's a whole city with its own problems and people to meet.
How will faction quest lines work compared to other BGS games? Can we join multiple factions and complete all of them like in Skyrim, or does joining one lock you out of certain others like in Fallout 4?
Yeah, so one of the early things we decided on was making sure that the main quest actually kind of gives you a little bit of a tour of the settled systems and all of the major players there, so that we can give you a taste of what they're going to be up to.
We're peacekeepers. We protect the people of the Free Star Collective.
We also discussed really
that audio compression drives me crazy, dude.
Early on, like, okay, do we make some of the factions be in conflict with each other? And we decided, we really want to make sure that you can play through all the faction lines independently of each other. And this time around, we were like, no, we really want the stories to be a little more personal, right? You're influencing the direction of where this faction is going to go. So say the politics of the Free Star Rangers, right? What's more important? Is it justice or industry, right? Where are you going to try to nudge them in this direction or another? So you don't necessarily end up as the head of every single faction of the game. But obviously all the major characters in every faction quest line will be reflecting on your choices, but it can have far-reaching consequences for what that faction is, what it cares about.
What will the role of some of the companions be during quests?
The companions along the Constellation storyline, which is the main quest, they'll have a lot of opinions, and
it all sounds kind of par for the course. The whole thing with like the really inconsistent answers surrounding dynamic placement and generation and stuff. I think that was a buzzword and something people got excited about maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Nowadays, though, like dynamic content is actually kind of a turnoff. It's like when you see big game studios talk about, oh, our game has 200 hours of content. It's like, that's actually for a lot of people a turnoff. It's not actually something that sells them on the game nowadays. It actually gets people turned off to the idea of the game because it's like, oh, so it's bloated. Okay. Well, oh well, play something else. I think nowadays people care much more about a lean quality experience than they do about just a huge one. And so dynamic content always gets me a little bit worried. And also, I don't think Bethesda has a great track record with dynamic content. The last 2 times they've tried it with, or I guess 3 times if you count Fallout 76, none of it was like very good. It's par for the course. I think Starfield in a lot of ways looks to be yet another, BGS game. In that capacity, I think it's going to be exactly what people are hoping for. However, there's a lot of people that expect even more. I'm one of those people. I'm waiting for them to show like the thing that makes this make sense. The thing that justifies exploring those 1,000 planets. The thing that justifies the fact that they cut like gore. The fact that it only runs at 30 FPS. All of these things are concerning to me. And there haven't really been any clear answers about it, which again just worries me, because if they had a 60 FPS mode, they would just tell you. Why have they not said it yet? Right? Like, it seems weird that they're just ignoring it and pretending like it doesn't exist. So a month ago, let's see, Starfield is targeting 30 FPS. The footage we have seen was an inconsistent 30 FPS, so yes, probably. Any reason why Bethesda does this? Hopefully they can add 60 FPS support for the Series X. Which videos have you found with FPS counters? I'm surprised they've released anything like that. Would love to see it. Love the username, by the way. They're downvoting it. Well, it's because the stream is at 30 FPS when most other game announcements show off 60 FPS. And even with the 30 FPS stream, it's chugging along and stuttering pretty hardcore. So I think that's why people are concluding that. I'll be a little disappointed if there's not a performance option. I don't really care about it being 4K personally. I do care about the frame rate. I tend to play 2 to 3 games at the same time. Yeah, they've also not announced anything about resolution targets either, as far as I know. Yeah, we don't know what option Starfield has, but Todd Howard has said in 2 different interviews he's okay with 30. Yeah, this I think is the most telling thing. Todd won't say it's locked at 30 and they're not offering 60, but he will say he's perfectly fine with 30 FPS for their games. And I think that says a lot. It would be a big mistake if they didn't have a 60 FPS mode. It would get big backlash unless every other aspect is perfect, which is unrealistic. I think, like, so let me be clear, because I've said that I think when people were raging about, for example, the Gotham Knights stuff. Wait, as chat catches up. The Gotham Knights stuff, people were saying, oh, it's going to be terrible because Gotham Knights only runs at 30 FPS, right? And that's bad. A game can be amazing and still run at 30 FPS. The Last of Us Part 2 ran at 30 FPS, most awarded game in history. Red Dead Redemption 2 ran at 30 FPS, amazing game, right? 30 FPS does not mean it's going to be a bad game. The reason why people are upset and would be upset if it only comes out at 30 is, for one, like nowadays, the trend for the last 6 months to a year has been that they offer, really more like 2 years since this generation of consoles came out. The trend has been to offer performance and fidelity. Performance running at 60 with lower resolution and lower quality, and then fidelity with higher resolution, lower frame rates, really, really high fidelity, all of the bells and whistles. Bethesda seems like they cannot manage to even run 30 FPS with performance quality, which is worrisome. The fact that there's no gore present at all in anything that they've shown makes me think that there might not even be gore in the PC version, which is even weirder. Like, if it's not even a toggle on PC and it's just something they cut, that's crazy. It would be one thing, like if they showed off the PC footage, all of this was like PC footage, and it had gore and had all that stuff, I think you'd get people really excited. And then if they announced like, oh, the Xbox Series X version doesn't have gore, we just had to cut it. That would be a bummer, but you know what? It has to be done. It looks like they just don't have it at all. So there's good FPS or 30 FPS and there's bad. Yeah, it seems like 30 FPS is not something they're pursuing for fidelity and resolution. It seems like they're pursuing that because they literally have no other choice. If they choose to try and run higher, they won't run. It won't work. I'm not buying a game that runs at 30 FPS. I waited for RDR2 to release on PC because of that. Yeah, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine if you're willing to wait. I would be really concerned that they, like, if on PC, I would assume that a lot of this stuff is PC footage. Normally that's what you see, is they try to make the game look as best as it can. So they crank it at 4K, try to get the frame rates high on PC and do that. And it seems like even on the PC port, it's barely running at 30, which is weird. In my opinion, Bethesda or Microsoft did a misbuy on Bethesda. Bethesda knew their time was over and bailed out. Well, it's not just Bethesda. They bought all of Bethesda Softworks and ZeniMax. So they bought the whole catalog of Wolfenstein, all of those studios. They bought a ton of stuff. Why does Bethesda get so much leeway for these things they cut out or compromise on and people keep buying their stuff? It's weird, Proto. People always do it when they're fanboys and fangirls of certain studios. It's just a thing that happens. It's a phenomenon. And I think a lot of it is that the rest of the game can be really, really good. So people are willing to forgive some things because they benefit in other ways. I just hope that eventually they got to stop. Like, pretending as though that gunplay looks good doesn't help Bethesda and it doesn't help you. If you call it out and you say, hey, look, guys, the gunplay looks really rough. No gore. Come on, it's 2023. Like, you're having to cut that in order to get it running at 30 FPS. At that point, that's up to you guys. Like, that's not our fault. That's not our problem. Like, you've got to figure this out. It's literally your job. It's what annoys me so much when people say, well, but it's really hard to get the game running at a stable 60 when you have as much stuff going on as they do. Like, okay, but it's literally their job. I get that it's hard. I understand that, but it's their job. I can say, listen, guys, I know that like Uncharted Ultimate Critique that's 8 hours long. I get that was like really poorly edited, or my voiceover was crackling all the time and my mic kept cutting out throughout the video. But it's really hard to make an 8-hour video with high quality. You'd say, cool, but it's literally your job. So stop complaining about it. You know, that's what you would tell me. And you would be right to tell me that. For them, it's literally their job to deliver a product that's able to run at modern standards. And modern standards are such that, you know, they would demand at least, I would think on modern consoles, people would expect performance mode at 60. I think that's the modern standard. And if you're going to run at 30, it better look amazing. But they're running at 30. It doesn't seem like they're offering the option, and it does not look amazing at 30. Seems like they've sacrificed a lot at 30. So that's concerning. The rest of the game could be great. There could be a lot of good stuff, but all of the warning signs and the things that have worried us about Bethesda games for decades at this point seem to be present here. Nothing seems to have changed. And the thing is, like, I talked to Mr. Matty Plays about this in the collab we did. He's willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I am not. After Fallout 76 especially, I will not give them the benefit of any doubt when they basically scammed their customers last time around. And they knew what they were doing. It was pretty evil, technically, like when you look at it. And I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of that. So, you know, maybe 10 years ago, I would have looked at it and be like, oh, well, it looks really, you know, it looks rough in a few places, but it's BGS. I mean, they made Skyrim. It's going to be great, I'm sure. I'm not doing that for them. They've lost all that trust. And that's just not something I'm going to forgive them on. So. He took my thing. Red